Hey guys, welcome back. In Frank, today I'll share wild Christmas Eve tales. But this time, Frank's not lying, he's really in room 3133. After he quit flying for Georgia. He lived like an invisible millionaire until he met a sweet nurse at the hospital reception in St. Sparks. "You're such a nice girl, thank you." "You'll smile really pretty," Frank thought, and then a wild idea popped into his head. "I'm a doctor," he declared to himself, and snipped off a badge, slapping it on with glue. Then he scribbled out some fancy writing on paper, stamped it, and slapped it on a diploma. Just like that, he graduated from Harvard Med. Doctor vibes 10/10. The hospital director didn't see a thing wrong and happily hired Frank. Just like that, in one day, he was the head honcho of the medical department, and he had a squad of little followers. But he wasn't in it for the money, he just wanted to get close to Nurse Brenda. From the moment Frank laid eyes on her, he was smitten, and Brenda felt the spark too. The trouble was lurking one night. An emergency patient rolled in, and Frank had to jump into action. Only problem? He was a fraud, but no sweat. Instead, he turned to the interns beside him and started asking them questions with great earnestness. The two interns truly cherished this rare opportunity. Little did they know, the chief Frank was in the restroom losing his lunch. After that, Frank realized being a doctor was high stakes. He decided to switch careers. It so happened that Brenda's father was a renowned lawyer, and Frank falsely claimed that he was one as well. He claimed to be a double major, and when her dad asked where he graduated, he confidently said Berkeley. Brenda and her mom were left momentarily speechless, considering her dad himself had studied law at Nanyang University. But her dad was skeptical and asked Frank another question. "Excuse me, what about the dog?" Shockingly, they bought it. With Brenda's dad's help, Frank landed a job as a lawyer. The secret to making it work? Binge-watching court videos at night and mimicking them all day. "Your Honor, here's my evidence," he'd say. But oops, wrong setting. Just a lawyer and no defendants or juries. No defendants, no jury. What's going on here? That night, Frank joined them to watch the game, and seeing their happy family made him nostalgic for his own lost joy. Right then, he decided to propose to Brenda and quit the counterfeit game. Meanwhile, Carl tracked down Frank's dad using a check. But how could Dad ever possibly turn against his own son? No amount of persuasion from Carl got him to spell anything about Frank. Just as Carl was about to leave, he stumbled upon a letter. It was a letter from Frank. He quickly jotted down the address, and soon the police were on the trail of a hotel. But by the time they got there, Frank had already made his grand escape. Carl cast his gaze upon a medical diploma hanging on the wall and fully comprehended that Frank had indeed switched careers once more. So he headed to the hospital, but little did he know, Frank had changed jobs again, leaving behind just a printer. Carl struck out again. On this particular day, Frank found his father and sincerely invited him to his wedding, solemnly declaring that he had gone straight for good now. But Pop still disagreed, and Frank was genuinely shocked after all this time has passed. Carl was still hot on his heels. On another Christmas Eve, Frank called him up. Frank begged Carl to lay off, but Carl was determined to catch him and lock him up. With a heavy heart, Frank had no choice but to hang up once again. Little did he realize that, by mentioning his wedding, he had inadvertently given Carl another opportunity to seize the moment. He had his team search all the wedding records in Georgia, and soon Frank and Brenda's wedding was on, and Carl was on his way with backup to get him. But at that moment, Frank spotted them and knew Carl was there. In a panic, he grabbed 2 huge boxes of cash. He realized if he got caught, he'd lose everything. Before bolting, he tried to convince Brenda to flee with him. Carl went upstairs, saw Bill fluttering from the room, and knew Frank was inside. But by the time he got in, only Brenda was there. Carl still couldn't nab Frank. The next day, Frank showed up at the meet-up spot, and Brenda was right on time. As Frank stepped out, he noticed a suited man chatting up under. Frank sensed something was off. He hastily returned to his car and began to carefully scrutinize the surroundings. Suddenly, he caught sight of Carl's hat and abruptly realized that he was surrounded by police officers disguised as ordinary civilians. Frank knew Brenda had ratted him out. He was heartbroken but had to let her go. Carl was furious because he had once again missed his target. But then he remembered, if Frank wanted to escape, he'd have to go through the airport. So he and his team hit the airport. No surprise, Frank had disguised himself as a pilot again, blending in with the flight attendant. Just when they were about to cross paths, the cops were utterly distracted by the flight attendant's beauty and totally overlooked Frank. Meanwhile, Carl was informed by a team member that they had spotted an individual outside the airport dressed in a pilot's outfit. It must be Frank himself. But unbeknownst to him, the real Frank had just slipped by him. Carl captured the driver instead, falling right into Frank's stride. By then, the plane took off and Frank slipped away right under his nose again. But he didn't give up. He took his fake checks to the Mint. Even the big shots at the Mint were blown away, saying, "These checks are insane, better than the real deal." Carl asked them where they printed such things. Then he had the light bulb moment, recalling his investigation on Frank. Frank's mom was born in a church in France, and on Christmas 1967, Carl visited that church and opened the door. And there Frank was. He wasn't surprised to see Carl arrive. This time around, he didn't flee again, but instead chose to surrender and accept his fate.